great story.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world for
Is that going to
Afghanistan was supposed to get a new start 1 year ago. After 13 years in power, the man who'd led the country since the Taliban government was defeated after 9/11, Hamid Karzai, finally stood down. That happened to coincide with the departure of many of the international forces in the country. At the peak, there'd been 130,000 US and NATO troops. Now there are about 16,000. That's led to an increase in insecurity and a very negative effect on the country's economy. Having to deal with the country's problems, the new leaders, after a contentious election in 2014 with widespread claims of ballot rigging, the two main candidates were persuaded to share power. Dr. Ashraf Ghani became president, his opponent, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, the chief executive. Today, he's our guest on Talk to Al Jazeera. How are the two rivals managing to work together? How will they cope with the country's numerous problems? Our conversation was conducted just before the recent Taliban takeover in the city of Kunduz. Dr. Abdullah, Chief Executive of the Government of Afghanistan, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. And if I can start with a subject that's outside of Afghanistan but in the headlines and concerns Afghans, and this is this refugee crisis of people fleeing to Europe in much larger numbers than before. And if you look at those who are going to Europe, after the Syrians, the second largest number is Afghans. Why is that?
Unfortunately, that's the case. Mainly it's concern about the security situation. Current security situation is challenging. Perhaps people don't have such a confidence over the future of security. That is the main issue, which is something that we have to address it. And it's mainly security situation that has led to this.
Isn't that quite an indictment, though, 14 years after the fall of the Taliban government and the arrival of those US and NATO troops that came to help you in Afghanistan?
Part of this is based on the facts on the ground that the people see. They come from the areas where being threatened by the Taliban, but part of this is also perception about the future of security. Which there we should have done much better in terms of communication and messaging to the people. And also, nevertheless, the issue of Daesh and Daesh name and what it has done to other parts of the region, though not in the neighborhood of Afghanistan, but as a whole, that also has an impact.
I'd like to talk about ISIL or Daesh in a minute and what the reality is. But on this refugee situation, have you been speaking to European leaders and what are you telling them about this?
Our message is to invest in Afghanistan, in security as well as stability and economic development in Afghanistan in order to not to have the problem in such a scale in Europe. Because it has turned into a crisis for Europe. While we appreciate the humanitarian attitude of the countries which are helping these refugees, at the same time helping Afghanistan, which in this case I'm talking about my own country, to focus on economic development as well as helping with security there, that will prevent this problem from further exacerbation.
And in terms of those people leaving, you know the laws of refugees and international asylum. In your estimation, are these people refugees seeking asylum or economic migrants?
Mainly refugees. Mainly refugees.
Tell me about the state of Afghanistan. Would you say now things are going in the right direction?
We are in the right path. At the same time, the challenges are there. There are achievements in the past 14, 15 years. At the same time, there are challenges that we need to address. in Afghanistan is still in need of support from the international community in terms of support for its security institutions as well as for economic development. We are not at a stage that we will announce self-reliance and then move on. A lot has been achieved with the support of the international community. Sometimes a sort of judgment is passed as nothing has been done in the past 14 years and so on and so forth. Far from it. Take every area of life. Life has changed for millions of people for better.
I remember interviewing you the first time after 9/11 in the Panjshir Valley, when at that point Kabul was still under the control of the Taliban government, and then your forces, backed by the Americans, marched into the capital. It's been a rocky 14 years since then. Where do you think the mistakes were made?
There were mistakes in parts of our leadership, and altogether there have been mistakes in part of the international community. In terms of our own leadership was not able to maintain the consensus which was built behind Bonn Conference and Bonn process for a while. Soon the focus was on internal rivalries and so on and so forth. That was the biggest mistake. At the same time, disarmament of Mujahideen in itself at such a phase where we didn't have national institutions, that in itself was a mistake.
That's what allowed the Taliban to come back.
That created a vacuum, while my view in the government even at that time was that there has to be a transition from local forces into national institutions. Rather than having a transition, there was a dismantling, revolutionary dismantling of the forces. Then Taliban took advantage of that. The biggest mistake, Pakistan's policy towards Afghanistan. From one side, being in the front line of the war against terror, that was the thesis of Pakistan, President Musharraf at that time in lead, and from the other side, allowing Taliban to regroup, re-establish themselves. And on top of this, the international community's focus on Afghanistan was shifted towards Iraq soon after.
They abandoned you.
I wouldn't say that would be a bit too much to claim, because they supported us. They have supported us throughout. But had that focus maintained in Afghanistan at that time, in a way, just to watch the policy of Pakistan at the time that the United States has lots of leverages over the situation, that would have made a big change. So, combination of these sorts of factors, it led to a situation that Taliban were able to take advantage of it. So were the other terrorist groups from the region, from Uzbekistan, from Kyrgyzstan, from Uyghurs, which were all together in the same bid with Taliban. They all took advantage of this, and then we had the situation as it is today.
And the situation as it is today is after a contentious election a year ago. Ashraf Ghani is the president, you are the chief executive. At the start of your rule a year ago, and I know opinion polls are hard to do in Afghanistan, you had very high approval ratings. If you look at the latest opinion poll by the major broadcaster in Afghanistan, Tolo TV, they have gone down a lot. Is that because of the state of the economy, where you have 50% unemployment rate by some reckoning?
First of all, when it comes to surveys and approval or disapproval ratings, we are not that advanced in terms of capacity there, so it shouldn't be automatically taken as such. But on top of this, we should listen to the people more, and there is resentment amongst the people. There is some level of disappointment amongst the people. Take just war economy, which was there earlier when over 100,000 troops were there. Parallel to that, there were hundreds of thousands of people which were one way or another related to the economy because of the presence of the foreign troops in the country. They are unemployed today because the security transition took place, but there wasn't a plan for economic transition. Afghanistan didn't have such a plan. Yes, the blame will come on the unity government, but the reality is that it is the product of a situation that we couldn't do much about it when we came to the office.
You are effectively in some sort of coalition with the president as his chief executive. How is that going? How are you getting along? Because some people thought it might be difficult.
Some people thought it might be difficult in governance in circumstances like Afghanistan, that you have many challenges, no doubt a lot of opportunities. Nobody had thought that it will be easy. And also formation of the unity government, it was a unique experience, and as a whole, Afghans and Afghan elite didn't have that experience in the past. Things started a little bit slow at the beginning, but now things are moving, and it isn't that within the unity government everybody's pulling things towards oneself. We are working together for the interest of the country, and both committed to the ideals of national interest of Afghanistan.
But you know why I'm asking this. It was a very acrimonious election, and I know you've known Dr.
Yes.
Ghani for a long time,
Yes.
now President Ghani.
Yeah.
Are you friends now?
We are colleagues, we are working together, and there is shared interest, and that's the interest of the people of Afghanistan, and we are both committed to make it work.
Some of those I speak to in Kabul say there are three people trying to run Afghanistan, that President Hamid Karzai, the former president, who is in a mini palace in the centre of Kabul, is still having meetings of tribal elders and political figures and sniping from the sidelines. Do you believe he's playing a helpful role?
I myself, once I was in the opposition, I would meet thousands of people throughout weeks and months and years. And it's not a bad thing to do, to be connected with the people and to talk to the people and to listen to the people. And it's also for former President Karzai, it will be interesting times to see what are the views of the people about 14 years that he had ruled Afghanistan. That I don't see a problem in that sense. And the other perception that you yourself mentioned, that he's ruling Afghanistan in a way that is part of the challenges of perceptions rather than the reality.
Let's look at the security situation, and I want to talk about the Taliban. But first, let's deal, because you mentioned it, the problem of ISIL. How many fighters do they have in Afghanistan? How much of a threat are they?
In some areas of Afghanistan, like Zabul, which I mentioned those names that
I've been there. Yes.
You've been there. In the south or in Farah. Groups of Taliban have announced allegiance to Daesh. They have changed the flag. In some other parts, like eastern Afghanistan, Jalalabad, borders with Pakistan, in those areas, some tribes, which are on both sides of the line, they have, and mainly towards Pakistan side of the line, that they have announced allegiance to the Taliban. For example, Urugzai tribe. Most of the elders and influential people in that tribe has announced allegiance to Daesh, and there have been clashes between those groups and the Taliban in those areas. it is still the main rock bed of the insurgency in Afghanistan. It's Taliban, and it's under those circumstances that groups under the name Daesh has taken advantage of this. But the situation is different from what you have in Syria or Iraq.
But the Taliban are very strong, aren't they? Perhaps stronger than they've been at any time since the fall of the Taliban government. There are places in the north that used to have no Taliban at all. In fact, the Taliban government never controlled Badakhshan, and now there's a lot of Taliban in Badakhshan, somewhere like Kunduz. This is very worrying, isn't it?
There are concerns, of course, but at the same time, part of this is related to the operation that Pakistan launched in its part of the areas in Waziristan and adjacent areas. And then these groups moved towards Afghanistan. So were the other terrorist organizations which were there. Not all of them, but some of them. This also has been a factor. And also, Taliban as a whole took advantage of the period which the political transition was about to take place, and the military security transition was taking place. I mean, the withdrawal of the foreign troops. And in the past few months, let's say the past 11 months, Taliban activities had increased a great deal.
Let's talk about Pakistan, because one of the initiatives of President Ghani when he took office was to reach out to Pakistan, a new initiative to try and work together with Pakistan. Did you, when that was first announced, have any misgivings about it or any doubts about whether it would work?
I had shared my views about it, but I thought that those efforts were worthwhile, making efforts. I didn't see harm in making efforts. But I had my views about the results. While still deep in my heart, I was praying that one way or another we will have some headways, which unfortunately the situation turned as it is today, which we didn't have cooperation from Pakistan in dealing with Taliban. And one or two rounds of talks that took place, it didn't have an impact on reduction of violence in Afghanistan. And at the same time, keeping the news of Mullah Omar's death for quite some time, that in itself created a situation that the level of trust that one would expect, the minimum level of trust which one would expect in these sorts of situations, that also was not there anymore.
Do you believe that Pakistan is actively helping elements of the Taliban?
There is no doubt that Haqqani group receives support in Pakistan, and also Haqqani group is behind most of the terrorist activities which are taking place in Afghanistan.
Well, explain this to me then, because Pakistan also gets attacks from groups calling themselves the Taliban. During the time, since the last 14 years, there have been a number of different political parties in Pakistan that have been governing. Who is supporting exactly the Taliban in Pakistan over this period? Is it the military?
Do you think that academia could do that, or civil society would do that? It's obvious what is the situation. I don't want to get into details of it. And the fact that they are receiving support within Pakistan, there is no doubt about it. And also the fact that groups like Haqqani and other terrorist groups linked to Haqqani have been behind Haqqani group. have been behind most of the activities, terrorist activities, which are taking place in Afghanistan against innocent civilians, which has led to a lot of casualties.
So what now is the policy? If you are no longer going to try and work with Pakistan on this, and you believe Pakistan is providing the safe haven for the Taliban, if you've got the US now in very much a support role, how do you deal with the Taliban now?
Two things in this regard. First of all, the policy is under review altogether based on the lessons that were drawn in the past 11 months and also based on the lessons of the past 14 years or even more. That does not mean that Afghanistan will give up on the idea of pursuit of peace. We still believe that we should make efforts, and if there are any opportunities and when there are opportunities, we should seize it. Today there are divisions amongst the Taliban. Parts of Taliban are claiming that they are for peaceful settlement. There might be an opportunity there. So we are studying the situation carefully, but the principal decision of Afghanistan in pursuit of peace is there, and there isn't any change in that regard.
Let me ask you about two factors which are separate but sometimes linked, and they're both linked to security. Corruption and drugs. Afghanistan is still the biggest producer of heroin. What has your government in the last year, you and President Ghani, done about those? What can you show me, concrete achievements on those two issues?
These are not issues that you will prescribe a prescription and then tomorrow you see the cure.
Well, you could have arrests, couldn't you? Have there been significant arrests?
It has happened. It has happened in both cases. People who were dealing with narcotics, a lot of them have been prosecuted and put into jail. Government officials, which have been part of the corruption cycle, there have been arrests and prosecutions. But this is not something that you can do it. You can deal with it and address it and get rid of it in a matter of months. It will take a lot of efforts, and also the fact that a lot of focus were on the security situation because of the overwhelming challenge which was posed to us. We might have not been able to address the other priorities, but certain concrete steps have been taken in this regard. Yesterday, I presented the action plan, national action plan against narcotics, which gives us a perspective of 10 years when it is a comprehensive program.
You fought 2 elections to be president. I remember covering in 3. Okay, but I remember in 2009 I covered in great detail that election. And on 2 occasions, you, on one occasion, were persuaded to bow out, the other occasion persuaded to compromise. Are you prepared to run again as president? Do you want to be president still one day?
Let us finish the term and deliver to the people what we had promised to the people. And my ultimate goal throughout my life has not been to only to get to the high office. I've been in the opposition, I've been in the resistance against the Soviets, later on in the resistance against Taliban. I've been part of the government, I've been outside the government, doing very little, and also in the opposition, and then I was a candidate. The ultimate goal has been to be in the service of the people in whatever capacity and whatever opportunity that comes along. At this stage, I am in the unity government, and my focus is on to do my best to see change in the lives of the people of Afghanistan, and that's my focus and that's my priority.
Dr. Abdullah, Chief Executive of the Government of Afghanistan, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.